This meeting is now resumed. Are there any apologies? I now call on the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Jared Cassidy, to address the chamber.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. As we turn the page to a new chapter of Brisbane's future, we find a tale of two cities on the horizon. More of the status quo, paying more and getting less, higher rates, higher fees, higher charges to live, work and play in Brisbane that feels like it is bursting at the seams. Or a Brisbane built strong, guided by the voices of residents and ratepayers, delivering the infrastructure and services that they expect and deserve in their communities. Right. Brisbane is at a crossroads. The city will soon make a choice on which path to take. Likewise, budgets are about choices. Choices about how we raise revenue and what we spend it on. Choices about who gets taxed and by how much. In an economy and a society with infinite demands and finite resources, choices are priorities. Budgets aren't made of glass, but they do serve as a mirror. They reflect what our values are and what our priorities are. And to hash those priorities out, we have politics. Now, some believe that politics are about power and influence and privilege. But we believe politics is all about people. Yeah. After all politics is local, and none more local than local government. The cost of housing has exploded. Infrastructure is crumbling. Basic services are neglected. Our workforce is undervalued and overworked. We've got to prepare for the world's biggest event. If we continue down this path that we're on now, we're going to lose the very essence of the city that we love. But it doesn't have to be this way, of course. We're in this situation because of the decades of decline under this LNP council. They've done just enough to scrape by, but now we've got bridges on the brink of collapse, young people being deprived of the opportunity to own a home, and people spending hours stuck in traffic only to come home to find their bins haven't even been emptied. The next few years are going to determine the next few decades here in Brisbane. It's about the community we want to live in, but it's also about the city that we're leaving for the next generation. I believe in a Brisbane where everybody can find a home to live in the community that they love, where you can get home sooner, actually, to spend more time with the ones you love. And where you know if you pay your rates, you get the services you can rely on. Right. These are Labor's priorities. Yeah. What this year's budget shows is that Adrian Schrinner and his LNP council have their priorities all wrong. They're making the wrong choices for Brisbane of today and the Brisbane of tomorrow. Choices for themselves and their short-term preservation, not long-term interests for the people of Brisbane. I have often pondered as I've sat in this chamber, listening to and watching the behaviour of LNP councillors. Why are they here? What are their values and what drives them? Why do they put their hands up to represent diverse communities across Brisbane? And after all these years, I still can't find a purpose that they serve that's higher than themselves. This budget doesn't have many numbers in it, of course, so here's some of my own. I've served as a councillor in this place for 10 years. I've seen 2 Lord Mayors, and what we see with this LNP budget is what we have seen with others before it. Brisbane is paying more and getting less. This year, $72 million more in rates alone. Wow. Millions more in fees and other charges. After 2 decades of decline under Brisbane's LNP council, we're seeing more ratepayers than ever, paying more than ever in rates, fees and charges to live, work and play and even die in Brisbane. Brisbane is a great and optimistic city, but that's despite its leadership, not because of it. In fact, we are absent of leadership here in council literally half the time. This year as councillors, we've spent almost 70 hours in this chamber debating important council issues. Lord Mayor, you have been here for around 30 of those hours. More than half the time you're not even here at work. Where is Brisbane's Lord Mayor? Getting ready for another overseas trip that could have been a Teams meeting. 5 overseas trips in 2 years, and he's planning his 6th now. Flying to Harvard to do leadership courses isn't burning the midnight oil for Brisbane. That's all for your personal gain. If Adrian Schrinner hasn't learned how to lead after 22 years as an LNP councillor, he never will. Meanwhile, at home here in Brisbane, people in this city tell us they feel unheard and their communities are missing out. It's no wonder why he is now known around Brisbane as the Lord Mayor of anywhere but Brisbane. With the Olympics around the corner, I had been holding out hope that this LNP regime would drop the blame game, would stop the spin and just get on with building Brisbane's future, to deliver the infrastructure and services that the residents and ratepayers of Brisbane expect and deserve. And this budget was Adrian Schrinner's time to shine. Since Adrian Schrinner was appointed as Lord Mayor, rates alone have increased by 25%. The LNP love to say that they are apparently keeping rates and rents low as they jack them up. But make no mistake, they broke that promise to the people of Brisbane. The Living in Brisbane flyer now costs almost $2 million per year. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent each year on radio, TV, print, out of home and social media advertising. Not advertising Brisbane, but advertising the Lord Mayor's messaging. He's paid ratepayer money to co-opt some of Brisbane's most influential social media personalities to suppress dissent from his decisions and his agenda. Sounds a lot like a regime, doesn't it?
Sure does.
But you can't host a housewarming on a deck if the foundations of your home are at breaking point. Behind the sheen of the marketing machine of this regime, infrastructure crumbles and services fall behind. A growing city has growing pains, that is inevitable, but this Lord Mayor and his LNP Council are stunting our city's growth, and the pain is more pronounced than necessary. Our Olympic moment was supposed to be leveraged to build the legacy infrastructure and reliable services that would serve us, the people of Brisbane, for generations, to make our city more livable, more connected, less congested and more affordable to live, work and play. What we were going to do, apparently, was learn from the mistakes of the games before us on housing, transport and cost of living. But in this game, the LNP have truly dropped the ball. It feels like we're in the last 2 minutes of extra time, but 30 points behind. Hope is lost. People are leaving the stadium. After the game, the coach there takes no responsibility, no accountability, blames the weather, blames the ref, blames the fans for not turning out. But ultimately, the only person he has to blame is himself. Adrian Schrinner is more Laurie Daley than Billy Slater. The decisions from this Lord Mayor and his LNP Council are costing ratepayers more by the day, and not just in dollar figures. Time lost with family from being stuck in traffic or getting left behind at the bus stop, if that bus turns up at all. People have to catch Ubers because the lights are out on the local street and they don't feel safe walking or cycling.
Yeah, that's right.
They're choosing not to go out and support small businesses because that bus doesn't service their suburban street anymore. LNP cuts add up ultimately, and it's Brisbane that pays the price. This LNP Council can extract revenue from rivers of gold that spread right across our city by simply ordering it so. Rates are up, fees are up, parking fines are up. But what exactly do they do with this revenue? Soon we'll hear from the Finance Chair and Deputy Mayor of this city. And recently, Councillor Cunningham told ABC Breakfast that the Lord Mayor and the LNP Council and herself understand that families are sitting around a kitchen table making tough choices about their household budgets. And apparently that's why her council is making responsible decisions, so they say. But while families gather at kitchen tables and they decide whether they need to cut the family holiday this year, the LNP are gathered in their party room to talk about spending $342 a day on international travel for the Lord Mayor alone.
Jeez.
While kids are getting knocked off their bikes by cars at Banyo and in Holland Park, this LNP council is choosing to spend $5.6 million on pancakes and Pilates in parks, while telling those families they can't find enough money in the budget to fix those problems.
Shame.
Or spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on radio and TV ads to share that they're keeping Brisbane moving as those commuters are stuck in traffic, listening on in horror. Or the LNP calculating that they can raise $2 million from seniors and pensioners through a tax on receiving their council tax bill in the mail. I haven't met any family that talks about the need to raise $2 million from seniors and pensioners so they can spend that $2 million on junk mail newsletters. Families don't have many options to raise revenue. They could go and get an extra job or two or sell something that they could go without, but they wouldn't waste any time using that to pay the bills, to pay their rates, or to put that towards a goal, unlike this Lord Mayor. After receiving federal funding for the Metro expansion business case, the Lord Mayor sat on that for 12 months.
Crazy.
Now the business case is expected to take another 2 years or longer, meaning the full Metro expansion will not be ready in time for the Olympics. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that this is the same Lord Mayor that said a business case for the Northside Metro depot was not needed.
Not needed.
He declared that he had the blueprint and he would build the Northern Depot without a business case. He at the time marvelled in his apparent genius. And just this week, we listened as he lectured about the need for a business case before you could build that depot.
Goodness me.
Because without one, apparently it would be crazy to suggest that. And watching 19 bobbing heads behind him cheer him on was all we needed to know about the LNP's commitment to transport planning for Brisbane. The Lord Mayor's plan now put witches' hats all the way up Gympie Road and to Castledine for the Olympic Games.
Goodness me.
That's his legacy. And he thinks he has a case to demand a blank cheque from the federal government. How embarrassing on behalf of Brisbane this man is. But what's been even more embarrassing for the Lord Mayor this last week is his admission that, in fact, he never even asked for a cent. He was forced to admit that his chest beating was in fact just a show, all for nothing because, again, he didn't do the work. He wasn't here.
He's busy overseas.
Is it any wonder we haven't seen any progress on projects like the Gold City Glider for 20 years?
Wow.
He's also broken their own promise to deliver the Northside bus review, now saying that can't occur until after the Metro goes to Castledine. Now, of course, with this LNP council, every bus review has meant less bus services, less bus stops and less bus routes in the suburbs of Brisbane. So perhaps we don't want an LNP review at all. But similarly, the status quo isn't working for the people of Brisbane either. The bus funding deal that our LNP mayor inked with his LNP friends at the state government is a dud.
Yeah.
He traded away more funding for suburban bus routes just to get his metro buses up and running because after a decade of delays, he still couldn't figure out how to run them. And we will all suffer through more congestion for more years because of this bad deal. Last year, Council rolled out the new bus network on the south side. That's all trunk and no feeder. 2/3 of commutes across Brisbane are from suburb to suburb. Yet this LNP council focuses on the third of people commuting into the city and back. The Lord Mayor funnels every commuter he can onto the Metro and claims that people are voting with their feet. if they use the busway, they have no choice. He rides on the coattails of the Miles Labor government and 50-cent fares that the former Labor state government introduced, which boosted patronage.
Great initiative.
But as people stay stuck in their cars or waiting in lines at the bus stop for services that never turn up in the suburbs, they know that this LNP council has let them down. And they are seeing the Crisafulli government let them down in Brisbane as well.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, Queensland's LNP Premier David Crisafulli turned the sod at Victoria Park, Brisbane, after he had police chase traditional owners out of their land.
Shame.
In his speech, the Premier highlighted that the Games would bring new legacy public transport infrastructure to the Gold Coast, to the Sunshine Coast, but not Brisbane.
What's missing?
So what did we get instead? Revelations that the new exhibition station may have to be torn down entirely for the athletes' village. And worse than that even, the Lord Mayor let the cat out of the bag this week, revealing that the Gympie Road bypass tunnel was now a pipe dream, pushed back until well after the Olympics. That's the same tunnel that Adrian Schrinner and his LNP council spent tens of thousands of ratepayer dollars on in the lead up to the last election through advertising backing. Where is the Lord Mayor in all of this madness? Totally missing in action. Rolling over to the state government as they throw Olympic events and infrastructure and the jobs that would come with them to everywhere outside of Brisbane. At one point, we could have seen Olympic rowing at Penrith in New South Wales, for goodness sake. But instead now it'll be held in the croc-infested waters of Rockhampton.
Oh dear.
Either way, it's a bad deal for Brisbane, and all the while the Lord Mayor is silent. Adrian Schrinner has proven he is on Team LNP, not Team Brisbane.
Yeah.
We need a champion for Brisbane. We need someone who will bang down the door at William Street or at Parliament House, regardless of whether those doors are blue or red, and actually just fight for Brisbane. Residents are over these cynical blame games. The Lord Mayor throws a tantrum at the federal Labor government, while the LNP state government guts support for our state capital. And Brisbane's LNP mayor stays silent about that. The LNP say that every dollar raised from parking fines go back into roads. Really? Really? Ask any commuter on public or private or active transport for that matter if they feel like our roads are $45 million better off now than they were last year. They would laugh at you. They would laugh at you. The Lord Mayor's response to this, his keystone policy of a so-called record $110 million road resurfacing program. That is actually less money in real terms than what Graham Quirk announced 10 years ago.
How embarrassing.
Another LNP cut inspired by an old policy from a Schrinner regime that is out of touch and out of ideas. And the result of all of this, Brisbane pays more and gets less.
Yeah.
Our roads and intersections are so congested and dangerous that kids are getting hit by vehicles at Banyo and out at Holland Park. But what is the Lord Mayor's priority? $5.6 million for pancakes and Pilates in parks. Let's not forget the other road that the LNP have failed to invest in, an icon that connects our city, the Story Bridge. It took many months to be able to view the documents under RTI which I accessed, which confirmed what we have suspected all along. It's no wonder why the Lord Mayor tried to hide these for so long and why he continues to hide more under lock and key up in Brisbane Square. We now know that due to LNP staff cuts and an underinvestment in maintenance, the Story Bridge is in a state of disrepair. It's all here in black and white in a council-owned document. The Lord Mayor was given a roadmap to save the Story Bridge 10 years ago, right down to the type of paint and primer that needed to be applied and when, and ignored it all. He claims they've been working on the bridge, but the evidence, including redacting all of the dollar figures, tells us
What
otherwise.
have you got to hide?
Even in the smaller details, it's clear how this LNP cut corners today, forcing ratepayers to clean up the mess tomorrow. It was recommended a decade ago that council should buy their own scaffolding to work on the bridge. Does that blow your mind? Council never owned any scaffolding to work on the Story Bridge. The LNP chose not to. They decided not to. As the years have gone by, ratepayers have now paid more hiring scaffolding than what they would have in actually buying it and using it and maintaining the Story Bridge
Crazy.
in the first place.
That is crazy.
They even removed the work gantry from under the bridge 12 months ago, which means no maintenance can now occur anyway. Moreover, every option to renew the bridge and its cost, the key people who decided what to do or not what to do, and when, is still redacted in Schrinner's Story Bridge files. 700 pages of files that he refuses to release, which are the smoking gun on his negligence. And now Brisbane pays the price. Now, we warned that the restoration would cost over $1 billion. In reality, it is way, way worse than that. It will cost us, the people of Brisbane, $1.35 billion for just 6 years of repairs so the bridge can be standing for the 2032 games. The total bill is $3.65 billion. This is gross negligence
Yeah.
and has been Brisbane's biggest cover-up. Don't just take my word for it, here's what some people have said over the last few days. Reuben said if the Story Bridge was maintained and not neglected, the cost would have been minimal. Yes. Marie, a 10-year plan had been recommended but ignored, and now we pay the price.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. And Eli, it looks like we'll be getting another toll road in Brisbane,
He knows.
thanks to Adrian Schrinner.
Shame.
The Lord Mayor is fighting tooth and nail to keep these documents redacted. If he released them, the people of Brisbane would know that he was presented with 3 clear choices 10 years ago. Now, the last of which, of those 3 choices, was a business as usual approach, which would, they said back then 10 years ago, inevitably result in the bridge's demise. Anyone want to guess which choice he made 10 years ago? Is it any wonder he has removed our ability to ask for information on citywide issues? Incredible. How many other projects, programs, services from council are caught up in this LNP regime of secrecy?
Yeah, good question.
How much better could we have it if council was actually just open and transparent? Wouldn't that be novel?
Novel idea.
When I look up at the Story Bridge, I do indeed see a story. In the Story Bridge, I see 2 decades of LNP decline in Brisbane. I see the $7 million temporary footpaths, which will be ripped down soon, the $1 million blue nets underneath to catch the crumbling concrete from those old footpaths. I see how the LNP cut corners today and how ratepayers will foot the bill tomorrow, throwing good money after bad, failing to invest in Brisbane's future. It is a grand symbol of what is happening right across our city.
Yep, that's right.
Out in the suburbs, sometimes not far from the Story Bridge, sometimes very far from the Story Bridge. People swerve around potholes from Skyring Terrace in New Farm out to the Brighton foreshore. Or in Kedron, where residents try in vain to simply get lighting repaired and some new lighting installed along the brook so they can commute or exercise with confidence. In Holland Park, where the best the LNP can do to a 20-year-old crossing that is a danger to life is just remove it altogether rather than invest in upgrades that the community is actually asking for.
Terrible.
In all these areas and much more, wherever you look, we could do so much better, not least when it comes to a roof over your head. No matter how ratepayers and renters get around, no matter which bridge they use, they all need somewhere to come home to at the end of the day. With more commuters, more ratepayers and more residents, everyone needs a home, somewhere to call their own on their budget in the community that they love.
Yep.
To be able to live in a city that you serve is not an unreasonable ask. Sometimes when you travel out of our city reaches, you can see BCC branded cars parked in Logan, Redlands, Moreton Bay, even Ipswich.
Yep.
Don't just take my word for it. Council's own data says that 40% of Brisbane City Council employees live outside the LGA now. These workers are not lost, they just can't afford to live in Brisbane. And if they can, they've concluded that what they need to build a life for their families is just not available here anymore. If this is the reality for Council's own workforce, what does that spell for locals across Brisbane? For the school teacher educating our kids, the nurse caring for the sick, the police officer responding to DV call-outs, the small business owner who took a chance on their dream, working from sun-up to sundown as the manager of the market, the head of HR and the accountant for their restaurant, for example. They're not able to just tap into public resources like the Lord Mayor does to fill all those positions for his own gain. For the Lord Mayor, he says the answer on housing is just all supply. But the supply of what is the question? Yes, the supply is the big piece of the puzzle, but as we support density in the right places, shops, services, amenities and public transport actually on your doorstep, we need to also think of other things as well. More people can mean more business and more community connection if done well and designed with people at the centre of these plans. But increasingly for Brisbane, this convenience is reserved for the very, very well off. Those with long-held assets, held over decades, that can be sold off for a tidy profit. This LNP council often talks about downsizers wanting to stay in their communities. Yes, of course. But we also recognise that this is not the only group of home buyer we need to cater for in Brisbane. This LNP council has claimed that they earned the title of Brisbane's most family-friendly city, yet they cannot explain how their plans can help young people build their lives here. Case in point, a new development in Stones Corner had their plans resubmitted after the passing of the Stones Corner Suburban Renewal Precinct Plan. The asking price for these units, it didn't come down.
No.
It didn't come down. There was just more of them. More profit to be made for high budget buyers at the expense of long-time locals. That means a hollowed out working class is being pushed to the periphery, even outside of the city limits altogether. Nevertheless, for the LNP, more ratepayers and more income to council. And the LNP come into this place week after week arguing for property speculators over first home buyers. And even just this week, the Lord Mayor spent a lot of his speech advocating for developer profits over people. Is it any wonder the whole precinct planning process that's underway in council is initiated and directed by a small group of landowners who stand to make millions and millions of dollars,
A lot of money.
and developers? Now, we know for a fact that peak housing organisations, community housing providers and members of the community are not part of the discussion when it comes to initiating precinct plans. Don't have to take my word for it. Adam Allen confirmed that was the case recently.
He sure did.
And the LNP can't even bother to draft an infrastructure plan for current and future residents to show that they can maintain Brisbane's livability. This is the heart of the issue. Council is losing control of its priorities. The LNP do appear sometimes to be driven by values, and in this case, it's the commodification of basic human rights for profit.
Yeah.
The LNP sees dollar signs wherever there is an opportunity to make our city more expensive to live, work and play in. And yet in the budget, capital expenses remain underspent. Materials and services budgets get cut year after year. Projects and programs get delayed into the never and just disappear altogether sometimes. But the LNP run around and say things are getting better. People aren't swallowing their magic pudding anymore.
No.
We are sleepwalking into a housing disaster, likely to repeat the shameful mistakes other cities made during their Olympic Games. Bussing rough sleepers out for 4 weeks and probably not bussing them back in, as happened in Paris. We didn't learn that after this LNP council spent $120,000 sending 2 LNP councillors over to Paris for the Games. No, they brought back 4 pages of homework saying that council needed to pick up the bins and run the buses during the Olympics. God help us if they're in charge.
Yeah.
Talk about value for money in a cost of living crisis. I'll tell you for free, just start doing that now. That'd be a good start. It's unsurprising. This is the LNP council that claimed they resolved the homelessness issue, as they call it, through a one-off donation. But they don't need to cross over the Victoria Bridge to see how this situation is getting worse. They just need to walk up to the deck on King George Square, or down Adelaide Street, or through the Queen Street Mall, or to Curlew Park, to see that Brisbane's homelessness crisis is getting worse, not as Councillor Howard described it, as resolved. When the Lord Mayor thought to bulldoze tents in Musgrave Park, did he seriously think that would solve the problem?
Shame.
Did no one tell him that these are people and they would probably have to move somewhere else? Now, we've never said this is an issue council can solve on its own, but they can do more. We should be acting
Absolutely.
with compassion and showing leadership.
Yes.
Now, the Lord Mayor claims his Christian faith informs his actions. He recently held a prayer breakfast in City Hall. But how will he be judged? Has he welcomed the stranger? Has he fed the hungry? Has he helped those most in need? The Lord Mayor embraces the emotive language of fear to achieve his outcomes, and he casts aside the actions of love, of community and justice. There are levers available to them. They are choosing not to pull them. Saying no to affordable housing targets, saying no to a mere trial of inclusionary zoning, and saying no to boosting the pathways out of homelessness grants.
Ridiculous.
He stays silent when the Deputy Premier of Queensland orders developers to not include affordable housing in new approved developments.
Shame.
Even LNP Life member Tom Tate couldn't stay silent when that happened.
Crazy.
But maybe we need to look back in Adrian Schrinner's closet for a reason. Remember when he described social housing as slums?
Never apologise.
The money's coming in, but Adrian Schrinner is making the wrong choices on how it goes out. Our council should not just invest in infrastructure, but the people who deliver it. Our council staff are working for an administration that is aggressively outsourcing core council work every year.
Shame.
This race to the bottom approach affects how council can deliver the basics. Just look at what's happened with miss bins across Brisbane. We recently learned of bus drivers who are contracting UTIs for the first time in their lives because of the state of the council facilities they are forced to use. Women drivers are leaving the profession due to the vile state of amenities. In our libraries, staffing has declined 21% since 2021, but in that same period, Brisbane's population has ballooned by 5.5%. For a population of 1.38 million people, we have just 255 and a half full-time equivalent staff across our entire library network.
Is that it?
Today, library staffing rates are at their lowest levels since the State Library of Queensland started compiling stats in 2010. That is a great shame on all of you. LNP cuts have consequences.
They do.
88% of library staff surveyed said they have experienced a decline in the quality of services they can deliver for the people of Brisbane. 92% of our library staff surveyed said their workload is unsustainable or overwhelming. And 86% of our library staff said their workload had negatively impacted on their health, their safety and their well-being.
That's so bad.
Is this the standard you all accept for our workforce?
No.
And yet if you want to book a community facility in Brisbane, it just got more expensive to do here in this budget.
I'll bet.
And what do we get in return? You would think elsewhere in our city we'd have staff working out in the community to understand where council should invest to make the suburbs of tomorrow better than what they are today. Well, think again. We have just 2 community development coordinator staff members for this entire city.
Wow.
The Lord Mayor has as many chauffeurs. For our employees, for ratepayers, for the livability of this city, we cannot afford this status quo any longer. On this side, we as Brisbane City Councillors with Labor values understand who makes this city tick, and we owe a better workplace and better wages to them.
Yep.
Because when workers win, this city wins.
That's right.
This is the choice before us. In 2 years, the people of Brisbane will have a choice of their own to make. Do we continue along like this, or do we turn the page for a new chapter in Brisbane? Only Brisbane Labor has the proven courage to stand up for Brisbane to address these challenges while actually being responsible with ratepayers' money.
Yep.
The budget released this year is not an apples for apples comparison to last year's budget. The budget has been fundamentally changed to hide the LNP's financial incompetence, something that was confirmed by the Deputy Mayor earlier this week. What we do differently? Well, we just start by doing something very simple. Let the sun shine in and make the budget papers transparent and accountable to the people of Brisbane. They're paying for it. This is the foundation for change that Brisbane wants and needs to deliver those real solutions that are focused on people.
Yep.
We would provide practical relief for first home buyers through our rate system, introduce better incentives for community housing providers to build more affordable homes.
Right.
We would set affordable housing targets in suburban renewal precincts, as other growing cities have done
Yes.
with success.
Yes.
We would deliver a real boost to funding for the Pathways Out of Homelessness grant program. One that recognises and responds to increased costs of providing services and support to those most vulnerable in our society. After all, isn't that how we're judged?
Yep.
It's clear that it's becoming more expensive to live, work and play in Brisbane, and that's true for frontline organisations on the ground as well.
Yep.
Those community workers helping the most vulnerable onto a path of sustainable long-term housing outcomes, by providing wraparound services to support to break down those barriers. Now, this is in stark contrast to the LNP of today. We wouldn't order developers to remove affordable housing they've already accounted for and agreed to build. And we wouldn't call social housing slums, as this Lord Mayor has done. We'd provide the funding to communities across Brisbane that they need after having first worked with them to identify priorities through local infrastructure plans. And we would be demanding our fair share from the state government for the Story Bridge,
Yeah, that's right.
for the metro expansion, for housing, for climate resilience, for disaster recovery, bus growth funding, active travel networks, and so much more.
Yeah.
We will pay our staff what they are worth.
That's right.
We will put work safe, home safe at the top of the agenda and unleash productivity gains from our workforce to deliver the infrastructure and services that residents expect and deserve.
Yeah.
And we'll do all these things because we actually believe politics is about people.
Yep.
For our city's future, we need to be Team Brisbane, not Team LNP. All politics is local and none more so than local government. We'll make the right choices, the ones that matter, that prioritise people over profit. Brisbane, I think, is ready to take a new path, and we are ready to lead them as a team to a future that they can look forward to. Just in closing, I want to thank my great team here today, Brisbane Labor councillors, Councillor Collier, Kim, Griffiths and Strunk, for all your hard work and turning up into this council chamber and doing the work on behalf of not just the communities that we represent, but increasingly communities that LNP councillors represent, because on that side what people see is City Hall's voice out in the community, but on this side what people get is the community's voice here in City Hall, and we will keep doing that right up to March 2028 and build that case for change in the community. I also want to thank our great team of support staff and all our ward office staff have assisted us and will assist us over the coming week, and also to our City Hall team here, Erin, Paul, Seamus and Jessica, and happy birthday, Ronan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. I will now call on the Deputy Mayor and Civic Cabinet Chair of the Finance and City Governance Committee, Councillor Fiona Cunningham, to reply. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in strong support of the 2026-27 budget delivered by our Lord Mayor. And I note that the Leader of the Opposition managed to stay in the chamber long enough to deliver a reply this year, which is more than what the people of Brisbane got from him last year. Madam Chair, at its core, this is a cost of living budget. It continues the discipline that has come to define this administration. We spend less where we can so that we can invest more where it counts. Spending less is how we keep rates the lowest in southeast Queensland and take real pressure off households during uncertain times. Investing more is how we keep Brisbane moving and keep our city the lifestyle capital of the nation. And none of it would be possible without acknowledging the simple truth that every dollar in this budget belongs to the people of Brisbane and not to us. That is the choice at its heart. Disciplined with every dollar, ambitious for our city and always on the side of residents who pay the bills. That is the budget the Lord Mayor has delivered. Madam Chair, none of what I have just described happens by accident. It is the product of sensible financial management repeated year after year. We told Brisbane residents at the last election that we would take pressure off rates and rents, and a promise like that is only worth the discipline that stands behind it. So we approach every line of this budget as money that belongs to residents, not to us, and we invest it that way. Our budgets are frequently framed amid uncertain times, and this one is no different. This year, it's a crisis in the Middle East that has sent shockwaves through the global economy with ongoing concern about fuel supply. That conflict is forecast to have a significant and ongoing impact on costs for all local councils. Transport and delivery costs for road infrastructure contracts have already increased by 15%. Diesel costs have jumped by around 90 cents a litre. And construction costs have risen by between 10 and 20%, with growing risks to contract renegotiations and supply chain disruptions. All of this in just 3 months, and that doesn't even consider the increased costs that we have already seen over recent years. Concrete, up 44%. Electrical conduit, 31%. Materials right across the board, 27%. The Reserve Bank now expects inflation to reach 4.8% this quarter, and Treasury says 5%. Madam Chair, here is the bind that every council finds itself in. Our costs are climbing, while help from levels of other governments above us head in the opposite direction. Of every tax dollar collected in Australia, local government keeps barely 3 cents, yet we're expected to deliver close to a third of the services and infrastructure that people use each day. Sit with that imbalance just for a moment. Over the past decade, Canberra's tax take has increased by 81%. Brisbane's reward? A steady transfer of costs back onto our books. The LGAQ measures that cost shift at 378% over 20 years. Around $360 million lifted off federal and state ledgers and dropped onto councils every single year. Take financial assistance grants. In 1996, they were worth a full 1% of Commonwealth tax revenue. Today, barely half of that. And the most recent federal budget carved another $332 million out of Queensland's share of those grants. Here in Brisbane, our slice of the Queensland pie has slipped from 8.6% to 6.6% in just 5 years, precisely as our population grew by almost 9%. A bigger city handed a smaller envelope. There is no version of that maths that adds up. And last month's federal budget did not deliver one new infrastructure project for Brisbane, even while the money flowed freely to projects in the southern states. Madam Chair, if you want to understand exactly whose side the Leader of the Opposition is on, you need only read the letter he sent to the Lord Mayor in May. He wrote to complain, not about Canberra shortchanging Brisbane, but about the Lord Mayor calling for Brisbane's fair share. And he didn't write quietly. He copied in 9 of his federal Labor colleagues, the Treasurer among them. In it, he holds up a list of federal contributions to Brisbane as though it were proof of Canberra's great generosity. There's just 1 or 2 problems with that. When you actually check his list, of the roughly $700 million that he cites, $673 million of that was committed by the former government, budgeted more than a decade ago. So the new investment since 2022?
Boy, Jared. Well done, Jared.
The new investment since 2022? About 1.2%.
Wow.
Barely $1 in every 80 the Leader of the Opposition listed. It gets worse, or funnier, depending on your perspective, because many of the projects on his list, Brisbane Metro, the Kangaroo Point Bridge, the Mogul Road corridor upgrade, Councillor Cassidy opposed at the time. He fought them and now he uses them to defend federal government investment in our city. So while he was at it, he found room to lecture the Lord Mayor that standing up for Brisbane's fair share is, in his words, not how you advocate for a city. But then on ABC radio yesterday morning, Councillor Cassidy said, we need advocacy and to work with other levels of government. So which one is it? I'll tell the Leader of the Opposition, through you, Madam Chair, what isn't advocacy. Writing to 9 federal Labor MPs to reassure them that all is well, while Queensland remains the only jurisdiction in the country handed less GST than it received 3 years ago. If the Leader of the Opposition genuinely wants to help, he can take it up with his federal Labor colleagues. Though I suspect that when Canberra wants to talk about Brisbane, and they do want to talk about Brisbane, the Leader of the Opposition isn't the person they call. Madam Chair, nothing reveals our discipline quite like the way we handle debt. This past year, simply by managing cash sensibly, we walked away from $345 million in borrowings we had been planning to take on. The dividend for residents is real, an estimated $202 million in interest that we will now never have to pay. Yeah. Debt you don't take on is interest you never pay, and relief you can hand back. A concept that Councillor Cassidy conveniently chose to ignore when he rushed to the ABC to claim that Council was, and I quote, in debt of $5 billion. Councillor Cassidy doesn't understand how to read a budget. 2 years in a row now, he's confused debt with liabilities. Give the Leader of the Opposition an almost $4 billion budget and he'll manage to find the one paragraph that suits his press release. He's done the maths, and that's precisely the problem. As per usual, he's discovered a footnote and mistaken it for a headline, Madam Chair. This year's budget is driving down net debt by 22% across the forward estimates, from $3.48 billion this year, not $5 billion, to $2.7 billion. Further, the Queensland Treasury Corporation has kept our strong credit rating in place, now for the 13th year running. Few measures of stability speak louder than that. Our balanced budget does the heavy lifting, managing our finances responsibly and saving money where we can, so Brisbane residents continue to pay less than other councils but get more investment where it counts. Because every dollar we keep out of the interest column is a dollar we can return to a resident's pocket. Madam Chair, families right across Brisbane are feeling the pressure of higher costs. Higher grocery bills, soaring electricity prices, and the relentless pressure of rent and mortgage repayments, thanks to interest rate and inflation pressures caused by excessive government spending. That is why we have made cost of living relief at the very heart of the budget. This budget assembles a cost of living package worth $76.5 million, real, tangible help for households right across Brisbane. At its centre is the most generous pensioner rebate in South East Queensland, rising as much to $1,350 a year for close to 40,000 Brisbane pensioners. There is the $60 on-time payment discount, shared by more than 279,000 ratepayers. And, of course, it includes a general rate rise well below inflation. There is the return of $2 summer dips, which last summer saved families $2.8 million across a record 758,000 visits to our pools. And there's free off-peak travel for seniors, concessions for charities and community housing providers, a fee waiver for first home buyers, and free annual waste vouchers. Every one of these is a deliberate choice to leave a little more money in residents' pockets. And I'm extremely proud that through sensible economic management, our team is able to deliver this cost of living relief for Brisbane residents. Madam Chair, the Leader of the Opposition has been at pains to point out figures that have shifted between this budget and last year's. So allow me to explain something that he either doesn't understand or chose not to mention. Just as briefed in the Finance Committee weeks ago, Council is modernising the way it manages financial information. From November, we're moving to a new cost model. This new cost model changes how costs are allocated so they better reflect the true cost of delivering services and projects. Previously, some indirect overhead costs were attributed to projects. However, they will now be held centrally. This means the 26-27 budget cannot be directly compared with 25-26 because costs are being allocated differently.
One moment, please. One moment. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, to interrupt. Councillors, do not call out while the Deputy Mayor is on her feet speaking. Deputy Mayor.
Costs are being allocated differently, not because of the work being delivered has changed. The effort, the services, the delivery on the ground, all of that continues exactly as before. What has changed is how the costs are attributed, aggregated and reported. But as per usual, the Leader of the Opposition made this all about him somehow. He called it, and I quote, tricky accounting. So I looked up who else, by the Leader of the Opposition's definition, is using tricky accounting, modern enterprise resource planning tools. None other than the Federal Department of Treasury, Finance, Defence and the Australian Taxation Office.
Very tricky.
But wait, what about a closer look? Here in Queensland, CS Energy use it, the same corporation that Labor hero Jim Sawley was previously chair of. And who could forget former Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, now on the board of Australia Post? They're also transitioning to this model. Only the Leader of the Opposition would think a change to our entire enterprise resource planning tools was designed just that so he couldn't directly compare budget information. It takes a particular talent to hold up the right document and reach the wrong conclusion. Madam Chair, it seems that every year the Leader of the Opposition performs the same trick. He reaches into a budget of nearly $4 billion, lifts out a single line, holds it up to the light and announces he's found a reduction. The Lord Mayor's Suburbs First Guarantee ensures that more than 80% of our investment occurs in Brisbane suburbs every year, enhancing our incredible lifestyle. And this year, $3.6 billion of our budget will be invested directly into the suburbs. Further, the Suburban Works program, a program that didn't even exist during the Labor years, has increased funding allocated to deliver even more works in more suburbs, including our record $110 million for smoother streets right across the city. We could have inflated the headline simply by borrowing more, but more borrowings, Madam Chair, means more debt, more interest, and ultimately higher rates. We chose not to do that. A responsible budget is measured by what it delivers for residents and by what it leaves them paying, not by how large a number we can print on the cover. It's no secret that we are coming off the back of a record capital investment program. An investment program that's delivered the first two stages of the Brisbane Metro, the Kangaroo Point Bridge and the Moggle Road Corridor upgrade. And was it not the Greens and Labor Party who opposed much of this record investment that we have delivered for this city? You can't have it both ways. You can't call out a normalising of capital infrastructure spend while at the same time opposing every project that record spend was invested in. Am I surprised? Unfortunately not, because after all, this is the Green Labor coalition of chaos who promised $3.5 billion of unfunded spending, pushing up debt and ultimately delivering nothing for the people of Brisbane except for higher rates. Increased spending and nothing to show for it. Only those opposite could argue that piling on debt to pad a headline is somehow a responsible course. Madam Chair, Brisbane is the lifestyle capital of Australia and this budget is absolutely determined to keep it that way. So imagine my surprise when I turned on the TV news this week to find out that out of a $3.9 billion budget, the biggest gripe the Leader of the Opposition could muster was to wage a war on pancakes and Pilates. That's right, his single greatest objection to this budget was our commitment to boosting free and low-cost fitness and nutrition. We already know those opposite oppose anything that keeps Brisbane moving, and now we learn they'll oppose anything that keeps Brisbane moving well too. The Green Labor coalition of chaos have turned opposition for opposition's sake into the only thing that they can actually reliably deliver. Let me reassure the Leader of the Opposition, pancakes are not the threat to Brisbane's finances. $3.5 billion in Green Labor unfunded promises is. We are the earliest rising city in the world, a young, bold and vibrant city where park runs, dawn Pilates and morning fitness groups are springing up in literally every corner. That That spirit is exactly what sits behind Move Well Brisbane. It's a game changer for active living in our city. More activities in more locations at times that suit modern life, from dawn to dusk, Monday right through to Sunday. We will more than double the number of our annual sessions from 9,000 to 20,000 and grow the number of small business operators delivering them. This is another way we're helping residents stay healthy, stay connected, save money and make the most of living in Australia's lifestyle capital. If anyone opposite has taken to Move Well Brisbane, it's Councillor Collier, who has been remarkably active these past few days, rushing around claiming credit for projects delivered in the Lord Mayor's budget. That's because, Madam Chair, there's plenty for councillors to take credit for, because the budget delivers right across our suburbs. A new destination playground at Carindale, along with significant park upgrades at Keating Park at Indooroopilly and 7th Brigade Park in Chermside. It refreshes the Bulimba Library, upgrades to the Dunlop and Parkinson pools, and it brings back $2 summer dips. Dip, dip, hooray. It invests in places that make Brisbane's weekends the best. Kedron Brook, Kingfisher Creek, the Oxley Creek Corridor, the Brighton foreshore, and a master plan for Wynnum, Manly and Lota. Last year, the Lord Mayor announced a $500,000 contribution to help Emmanuel City Mission establish a 24/7 night sanctuary, which in just 6 months has already delivered more than 600 safe night stays. This budget commits a further $750,000 over the coming 3 years, so the sanctuary can open on more nights and help more people experiencing homelessness to get the safety, the rest and the helping hands they need. Now, Councillor Cassidy was quick off the mark yesterday, standing on the side of the road complaining about the Northside Tunnel. I have to ask, Madam Chair, through you, does he have short-term memory loss? Another fake campaign, just like their failed Toll Tales debacle from last year. It was this administration who advocated for a Northside Tunnel. One the former Transport Minister, Mark Bailey, refused to support. This project Mark Bailey called a feeble fantasy and a farce. And then Councillor Cassidy's Labor Lord Mayoral candidate went to the last election claiming that building more roads was not the answer to congestion. Labor and the Greens have both consistently opposed building new roads to help Brisbane residents get home sooner and safer. We all know there wouldn't be any roads or infrastructure built if it was left to the Labor Party. Our budget, on the other hand, keeps Brisbane moving. It delivers a record $110 million resurfacing program under Operation Smooth. Close to 1 million square metres of smoother roads following the success of the Big Fill on potholes. It progresses the Beams Road upgrade in the north, congestion-busting intersection works at Inala, and the next stage of our Clearway Action Plan on Vulture Street. And through smarter suburban corridors, we're trialling artificial intelligence to get more out of the road network we already have. We're building new bikeways at Kangaroo Point, at Cannon Hill, Roachdale and South Brisbane, and laying new footpaths right across the city. At the heart of it all is Brisbane Metro, already past 10 million trips, with this budget continuing the business case into expanding Brisbane Metro to more people and more places. Together with our new bus network, which means an extra 160,000 services every year, this budget commits a record $213 million to subsidise our bus, ferry and Brisbane Metro services, because Brisbane remains the only council in the country that subsidises the cost of running public transport. And then, Madam Chair, there is the Story Bridge. An 85-year-old bridge built to last 100 years, carrying more than 100,000 vehicles a day. It has earned its renewal. The Story Bridge Renewal Progress Report recommends an investment of $1.35 billion ahead of the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. We're seeking an 80-10-10 funding partnership, 80% from the federal government, 10% from the state and 10% from council. Because what's good for the Bruce is good for the bridge. If the federal government can give 80% to the Bruce Highway, they can do exactly the same for the Story Bridge. Council's contribution of $135 million over the forward years has been included in this year's budget. And this investment is on top of the $18 million this year alone to continue the regular maintenance work, including the resurfacing of the southern approach to the bridge. Madam Chair, let me turn to the number that every household watches most closely: rates. The Reserve Bank is forecasting inflation will reach 4.8% this quarter. Our general rate increase will be well below that figure at just 3.97% for owner-occupied houses. That means the impact for the average owner-occupier is around $1.22 a week in general rates. And it means that Brisbane residents will, of course, pay the cheapest rates in South East Queensland. Had our rate increase been in line with the Reserve Bank's 4.8% forecast, it would have cost Brisbane residents almost $15 million more over the next 12 months. Instead, that money stays in their pockets, right where it belongs in uncertain times. Even before most other councils have handed down their budgets, Brisbane's rates are hundreds of dollars cheaper. Relief for homeowners and relief for renters in our city as well, because pressure that never reaches a landlord's rates never reaches the rent. Sensible financial management is what makes that possible. Our balanced budget with a surplus, net debt down 22%, the 13th consecutive strong credit rating, and removing $345 million in borrowings keeps costs down for all Brisbane residents. The lowest rates in the region. That is what it looks like when a council spends less so that residents pay less. Madam Chair, a budget shows what you stand for, and we couldn't be clearer. We have chosen to spend less where we can, with the cost of living package providing real relief, the lowest rates in South East Queensland, the most generous pensioner rebates, another surplus to buffer against unexpected cost increases, and borrowings removed and debt falling. And we've chosen to invest more where it counts, with a record $110 million for smoother roads and a record $213 million to subsidise bus, ferry and metro services. Investing too in the parks, the pools, the libraries, the playgrounds and our Move Well program that keeps Brisbane the lifestyle capital of Australia. That is what this budget delivers. It's responsible, it's balanced and it keeps faith with the people who pay for it. And then there is the alternative. The Leader of the Opposition rose in this place today, give him credit for at least sticking around for that, with every opportunity to offer Brisbane residents something, just one new project, just one original idea. All they have is the same $3.5 billion black hole they carried to the last election. $3.5 billion in promises must come from somewhere, and somewhere is always your rates notice. That is the Green Labor coalition of chaos in a single sentence. Spend what you haven't got and tax what you can, the same as their federal mates. Brisbane has already made its choice. It chose Team Schrinner, the team that does the work, that's got on with the job of keeping our city moving, keeping costs down and ensuring Brisbane remains the best place in Australia to live. Madam Chair, budgets are a marathon, not a sprint, and there is a team of people who have put in many, many months of work to prepare this budget that I would like to thank. To our Lord Mayor, thank you for the leadership that you give this city, this council and our team. And thank you to my Civic Cabinet colleagues for their support. To our CEO, Kerry Freeman, and Corporate Services Group Executive, Anne Lenz, thank you for your continued counsel and guidance. To Chief Financial Officer Mark Russell, supported by Narelle, James, Matt, Clinton, Jenny and David, and the entire strategic finance team who carried this work across many long months. Thank you. I'd also especially like to acknowledge staff in the Lord Mayor's office, especially to Steve, Nathan, Michael, Hannah and Ethan. And a very big thank you as well to Aaron, who knows this budget inside and out, and also to Madison. It has been a privilege to help shape this budget for the people of Brisbane, one that keeps costs down where we can, delivers real cost of living relief and invests more where it counts, thanks to sensible financial management. Now comes the important part, Madam Chair. Let's get on with the job of delivering for Brisbane. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Lord Mayor, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Madam Chair, I move that this meeting adjourn until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, 24th of June 2026, to allow for information sessions to be held later today and on Monday, 22nd of June 2026 on the budget programs.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the meeting adjourn until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the 24th of June 2026, to allow for information sessions to be held later today and on Monday, the 22nd of June 2026 on the budget programs. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. This meeting now stands adjourned until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the 24th of June 2026.